I remember the day he left like it was yesterday, the way he held my hand, promising he'd come back to me. But when he returned, all I could give him was silence. It wasn't always like that. At first, I waited eagerly for his calls, the letters he sent like lifelines. But as the days stretched into weeks, something inside me began to change. I stopped answering his messages. I stopped writing back. I didn't know how to explain it, how to say the words that felt too heavy, too raw. So I shut down. I went quiet. When he came home early without warning, his eyes searched mine, desperate for a spark, a sign. But I was a stranger to him then. Quiet. Distant. Closed off in a way I couldn't break free from. I saw the confusion in his gaze, the hurt when I didn't speak. He tried to reach me, but every word bounced off the walls I'd built around myself. He didn't know the real reason behind my silence. Not yet. There was something I was hiding. Something buried deep inside, scribbled on pages he wasn't meant to find. I thought if I kept it locked away, it would stay safe. But secrets have a way of clawing their way out. Now, as I sit here, I want to tell the story he wasn't prepared to hear. The story behind the silence, the fear, the pain, and the truth that shattered us both. Because sometimes, silence isn't empty. Sometimes, it's full of things too painful to say. This is my story. The story of a soldier's wife who went silent and the moment when everything changed. Before he left, everything felt so alive, like our world was full of light and endless possibilities. We were young but certain. Every day was filled with small moments that made me fall in love with him all over again. We laughed over breakfast, planning weekends that felt like little adventures. He'd brush a stray hair from my face and tell me, "I'm coming back for you." And I believed him. We talked about our future, our first home, the kids we wanted someday, the quiet nights after a long day. Nothing seemed impossible when we were together. When the deployment orders came, I tried to stay strong. I packed his bags with hope wrapped around every fold. The night before he left, we held each other tightly, as if trying to memorize the shape of us before the distance swallowed everything. At first, I kept busy. I wrote him letters every day, pouring my heart into the pages. I'd reread his replies 100 times, clinging to his words like a lifeline. Our calls were sacred, a chance to hear his voice, to pretend the miles didn't exist. But then slowly the calls got shorter. The letters became less frequent. I told myself it was normal. He was busy, tired. I understood. But inside, a quiet ache grew. I found myself staring at my phone, waiting for a message that never came. I tried to write back, but the words wouldn't come. My fingers hesitated over the keyboard, heart pounding with things I couldn't say. The silence between us started small. A missed call, a delayed reply, but it spread like a shadow. I felt myself slipping into a place where loneliness mixed with something darker. Fear maybe, or shame. I stopped telling him about my days. I stopped asking about his. The gap between us widened until one day I realized I barely recognized the woman I'd become. I was still his wife, but I was also someone lost in the quiet, trying to hold on but slowly falling apart. The months stretched on, one after another, heavy with silence. Inside me, a storm raged, a tangle of loneliness, fear, confusion, and a guilt I couldn't explain. Each day felt like walking through fog, trying to find a way back to who I was before. I was alone in a crowd of my own thoughts. The walls I built around myself grew thicker, shutting out the world and even him. Sometimes I wanted to scream, to tell someone, anyone, what I was feeling. But the words stayed trapped, tangled in my throat. Loneliness wasn't just about missing him. It was deeper. It was waking up in the dark, feeling a weight I couldn't name pressing down on my chest. Fear that maybe he didn't need me anymore. Confusion about what I was supposed to do when the person I loved was thousands of miles away. And guilt for feeling so lost, for not being the wife he deserved. He called less often, and when he did, I could hear the worry in his voice. His questions became quieter, more careful, like he didn't want to push too hard. But I knew he was scared. He told me once, "I don't understand why you're pulling away. Please don't disappear on me." I wanted to explain, but I couldn't. How could I tell him that my silence wasn't about him? That it was about something breaking inside me, something I didn't know how to fix. At night, I wrote in my journal. It became my secret place, the one thing I could hold on to when the world felt too heavy. In those pages, I spilled my heart. Sometimes my words were raw and jagged, sometimes soft and aching. I wrote about missing him, about feeling invisible, like my pain didn't matter, about the moments when tears burned my cheeks, but I hid them behind a forced smile. There were entries filled with questions I didn't dare say out loud. Why do I feel so alone when he's coming home to me? What if I'm not strong enough? Can love survive this kind of silence? The journal was my silent confession. It held the truth I couldn't share. But even writing didn't ease the ache. It only reminded me how far away I drifted from him, from myself. I was a prisoner of my own silence, and I didn't know how to break free. He came home earlier than expected. No warnings, no goodbyes, just the sound of the front door opening, familiar but strange. I wasn't ready, I wasn't prepared to face him. When I saw him standing there, all I could do was look away. The distance between us felt wider than ever. His eyes searched mine, hoping for answers, but I had none to give. He tried to talk, to reach me, but I stayed silent. I didn't know how to explain what was inside me, the storm of emotions I kept hidden. So instead, I shut down. Days passed, and the quiet grew heavier. He kept asking questions, but I gave only silence. It was easier that way. Then one afternoon, he found it. My journal. It was sitting on the bedside table, the pages worn from late-night writing. I didn't mean for him to see it. I hid it from him like a secret I was too afraid to share. But there it was, waiting. He picked it up hesitantly, fingers trembling. I watched him from across the room, heart pounding. I wanted to stop him, but the words inside had already escaped me. He opened the journal and began to read. Page after page, my raw feelings spilled out in ink. My loneliness, my fear, the silence that swallowed me whole. I could see the shock in his eyes, the hurt, the confusion, but also something else, love. Desperation, maybe. The desperate hope to understand. In that moment I realized the silence was no longer mine alone. It was ours. He kept reading, each page heavier than the last. The words I thought I had buried in silence were now laid bare before him and me. I could feel his breath hitch, the way his hands trembled, as he turned the pages, desperate to understand what I couldn't say out loud. In those pages, I wrote about the loneliness that swallowed me whole, how each night felt colder without him there, how the house, once filled with warmth and laughter, became a hollow shell, echoing with my own quiet cries. But there was more, something I never told him, something I thought I had locked away forever. One night, a few weeks into his deployment, someone came to my door. I didn't know him well, just a neighbor who'd stopped by to check if I was okay. But that night, his concern turned into something darker. He crossed a line I never imagined could be crossed. I didn't scream. I didn't fight, I froze. The weight of that moment crushed me, and I buried it deep inside, afraid it would destroy everything we had. I wrote about the fear that followed, fear of telling him, fear of breaking the life we built. I was trapped between wanting to be honest and wanting to protect him from the pain. Every time I tried to speak, the words caught in my throat. So I chose silence. Not because I didn't love him, but because I thought love meant shielding him from my broken pieces. The journal pages revealed my guilt too. Guilt for feeling like I wasn't strong enough. For carrying this secret alone, for drifting away when he needed me most. As he read, I could see his world shifting, his face once full of hope, now clouded with shock and heartbreak. He wasn't just reading my pain, he was living it with me piece by piece. He found entries where I questioned everything. Am I still the woman he married? Will he still love me if he knows? I wrote about the nights I cried myself to sleep, wishing I could rewind time, undo what happened. But there were also words of love, how deeply I still cared for him, even when silence took over. How I dreamed of healing, of finding our way back to each other. He paused on one page, eyes glistening. The weight of my secret hit him hard, but beneath the hurt, I saw understanding begin to bloom. He didn't say a word at first, He just closed the journal gently, as if holding something fragile. That moment broke something open between us. The silence I had carried for so long wasn't just mine anymore. It was a wound we both needed to face. The truth was raw, painful, but it was also real. And maybe, just maybe, it was the first step toward healing. After he closed the journal, the room felt heavy with words left unspoken. But I saw something in his eyes, a quiet patience, like he was ready to listen, really listen, for the first time in months. He sat beside me, holding the journal carefully, like it was a fragile piece of our shattered world. "Why didn't you tell me?" he asked softly, voice barely above a whisper. I wanted to disappear. The shame threatened to swallow me whole, but the weight of his question pulled the truth out, slow, trembling, but real. I was scared, I admitted, my voice cracking. Scared you'd hate me, or worse, that you'd be afraid. I thought if I told you it would change everything between us. He reached for my hand. "You're still the woman I love," he said, voice steady but full of emotion. "Nothing you went through can change that. But I need to know, what were you feeling? What made you shut me out?" Tears spilled down my cheeks, as I finally let the walls crumble. I told him about the fear I couldn't face, the silence that wrapped around me like a cloak. How the night I wrote about in the journal wasn't just a memory, it was the moment everything inside me broke. He didn't interrupt or judge. He just held me as I poured out the pain I'd kept hidden. "I wanted to protect you," I whispered. "But I think I only pushed you away." He pulled me closer. "We're stronger than this silence. We'll face it together." Our conversation stretched long into the night, raw, messy, and honest. For the first time in months, we spoke without fear, without pretending. We talked about the pain, the mistakes, and the hope that still flickered between us. Healing didn't come overnight, not even close. The day after he read my journal, we barely spoke. Not because we didn't want to, but because everything felt so fragile, like one wrong word might shatter the thin thread we were trying to hold on to. He stayed close, quietly doing things around the house, while I watched from the corner of the room, wondering if he was really still mine. The wounds between us weren't just from what happened. They came from everything we didn't say, all the times I stayed silent when I should have spoken, and the moments he pulled back, because he didn't know what I needed. That kind of damage doesn't heal with a single conversation. Some days, it felt like trying to put a broken vase back together with trembling hands and no glue. But the truth had opened something. A door we'd kept closed for too long, and once it was open, there was no going back. He started asking questions, not the kind that demanded answers, but the kind that said, "I want to understand." And I tried to answer, even when my voice cracked, even when the memories made my chest feel tight. Some days, I told him everything, and other days I just cried while he held me. And strangely, that was enough. I learned something I never really understood before. Love isn't just about the good times. Anyone can love when everything's easy, when laughter fills the room and the future feels bright. But real love, it shows up in the dark. It stays when you feel unlovable. It listens when your words don't make sense, and your heart is all jagged edges. Real love says, "I see your pain, and I'm not going anywhere." I used to think forgiveness meant forgetting, that to move on we had to erase the pain, and pretend it never happened. But that's not true. Forgiveness, the real kind, is messy. It means sitting with the hurt, feeling every bit of it, and still choosing to stay. It means waking up every morning and saying, "I'm still here, even when the scars feel fresh." It means building something new, not on top of what broke, but beside it. That night we sat on the couch, my head on his shoulder, the silence between us soft, instead of sharp. That night was the beginning. Not the end of our struggles, but the start of something fragile and real. We still had so much to work through, trust to rebuild, fears to face, memories to unpack, but something was different now. Silence no longer held power over us. We had spoken the unspoken, and we were still standing. There were days I doubted everything again. I'd wake up and feel that old ache in my chest. I'd catch him looking at me with a sadness in his eyes, and I'd wonder if he regretted staying. But every time I asked, he'd take my hand and say, "We're in this together." And that became our promise, not perfection, just presence. We still have miles to go. Healing isn't a straight path, it's full of setbacks, of moments when you fall back into old fears. But now there's a light in the distance, and for the first time in a long time, I believe we'll reach it. Looking back now, with a clearer heart and steadier voice, I see just how heavy silence can be. I truly believed that by keeping things to myself, I was protecting the people I loved. I thought my pain would be too much for him to carry, that if I stayed quiet, he could keep focusing on his mission, on surviving. But I was wrong. Silence doesn't shield the ones we love, it separates us from them. It becomes a wall that grows higher every day until neither of you can see over it. What I went through taught me that love isn't just about the happy moments, it's not just about showing the best parts of ourselves. It's about letting someone see the raw, unfiltered truth, and trusting they won't run. It's about facing the pain together, even the kind that leaves you shaking, even the kind that never fully goes away. And I learned that speaking up, saying the hard, messy, uncomfortable things, can be the most powerful act of love. Silence hides the storm, but words can calm it. Words, when spoken with honesty and vulnerability, give people a chance to step into your world, to stand beside you instead of being locked out. Trust isn't something you demand or expect. It's something you rebuild, piece by piece, with patience and care. It doesn't come from grand gestures, it comes from showing up, even when it's hard. From listening without trying to fix. From holding someone when they cry, and choosing not to let go. Our story isn't perfect. It's scarred and complicated, but it's ours. And every day, we make the choice to keep walking through it together. Not because it's easy, but because love is worth fighting for. Because we still believe in what we built, even if it looks different now. If there's one thing I want you to remember from my story, it's this. Don't be afraid to speak your truth. Don't carry your pain alone. Even when it feels impossible, even when the fear is louder than your voice, say it anyway. Let someone in, because the right person won't walk away. They'll stay, they'll listen. And together you'll find your way back. If this story touched your heart in any way, please take a moment to like the video, share it with someone who might need to hear it, and leave a comment below. I'd love to know your thoughts or your own story. And don't forget to subscribe for more real, honest stories. Stories that remind us we're not alone. Because none of us should ever have to heal in silence. Thank you for listening to my story. If it touched your heart, please like this video, share it with someone who might need to hear it, and leave a comment below. I'd love to hear your thoughts and experiences. And don't forget to subscribe for more stories that remind us we're never truly alone. Together we can find strength in our silence, and hope in our voices.